Linda just welcomed me back from my 2-week journey where I was in Detroit as a member of the board and having been on field for 3 years. They called in ministers to come and interview all of the students, and we had 63 students. And they have to come, and it's called L&O. So I am a license and order minister. And you can imagine how greatly loved and beloved we were with our questions. But I learned a lot of, and since it's been 30 years since I was in school, they've changed a number of things, which I find interesting. And so it was lovely. And so I told them all about you, and they all are looking at when this ministry is going to open up, when I'm going to leave here, when they're going, so that, they're very interested. So it was a lovely experience. I enjoyed it a great deal. If you like Detroit, and I happen to like Detroit, but Detroit I think is an acquired taste. So this being the month of December, we find that somewhere between 14 and 19 world religions are celebrating something very special this month. They're celebrating it. It's various and sundry festivals that are showing up, and Christianity is no exception. We are celebrating one of the 2 most powerful times a year, the birth of Jesus. And that is traditional Christianity. And New Thought being obviously the more metaphysical, but the more mystical aspect of Christianity, we find that we are celebrating more than the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. We look at it, of course, we look at it according to the story. We read it literally. The story of Jesus is found in the Gospels of the Christian scriptures. And we look at it, after we look at it literally, then we look at another way of going a little deeper into all of the names, all of the nouns actually of the scripture. We look at the traditional. We look at the history. We look at what is it actually saying based on the tradition and the history. And we consider that as we look at the metaphysics. And the metaphysics beyond the physical, beyond the word. We look at what are the symbols? What do they actually represent? That is our metaphysics. And then finally, you think that the mystical tradition could be a little bit quicker, a little lighter, but no, we go deeper. And when we get to that 4th aspect of the study, we look at the relevance, the value, and how it fits into our life. Because it is whatever is in the Bible written 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, we can look at it, and when we look at it metaphysically, we recognize how relevant it is for our lives today. So, as you recall, I'm not going to read the scripture, but as you recall, it begins with the angel Gabriel coming into conversation with Mary and providing her the divine idea. Angels are messengers of God, and they always share the divine idea. The divine idea that in this situation is about the birth of Jesus as the Son of God. And as Gabriel is sharing, this is what is about to happen because you are so favored, Mary looks at it and says, how could this be? Since I have known no man, how could this be happening? Comma. Here's another one of those commas that are very helpful. Comma, but nevertheless, let it be done unto me as you have described, as you have told me. So Mary is symbolized by the divine feminine, our own feeling nature, and the intuitive nature. The feminine, the feeling, and the intuition. So here we're learning about the birth of Jesus, but a divine idea whose time has come can be about anything, can be absolutely about anything. For example, we might be driving down the street and our feminine nature looks over and sees an absolutely darling car in a darling color, and we say, I love that. I love that. That's my kind of car. That's me driving that. I want that car. And there's just the realization that there's something tells us that that is a perfect car for us to have. But there's no other conversation around it, just the acceptance of that particular divine idea. Mary just totally accepted. Nevertheless, let it be done unto me as you have said. Mary totally accepts the divine idea. So there isn't a whole lot of conversation about Mary in the New Testament, but in the Apocrypha, there's a lot of writing and a lot of more information about who she is and what is her life been like. And it began, she was, when she was born, when she was 3 years old, she was taken to the temple and dedicated at the temple where she lived until she was 12 years old. And when she was 12 years old, then Gabriel comes and tells her that she has about to be experiencing being the mother of the Messiah that they have been waiting for generations. She was betrothed and had been for some time to an older man named Joseph. And Joseph traditionally is known as the head of an esoteric society, the White Brotherhood or Order of Melchizedek, or one of these esoteric organizations in which he would be available from birth to raise this very special one. He was available. He understood the metaphysics. He understood going beyond, and it was. He was not just a person who was betrothed to Mary, but someone very important for the development of Jesus. That is traditional, and when we look at what does he represent, of course, as a man, he represents our masculine nature. He is our intellect, he's our thinking nature, our intellect, and our thinking nature. And as Mary carries the resonance and the power of divine love, Joseph carries the resonance and the power of divine wisdom. So we have the idea of the thinking and the feeling nature. When they come into agreement, or we often say when they are married, then that becomes our truth. That becomes the reality. The agreement between what is held in the feeling nature and what is also agreed upon with the thinking nature, that agreement moves into the subconscious, and this is where we manifest from. So we have to have that agreement. You can't just have the feeling or the thinking saying, yeah, I like that, and the other aspect says, no, that's not going to work. As when we finally decide, I want this particular car, we go through the next step. If you were married, it may be outside of yourself. If you live by yourself, it would be a part of your own. It would be a part of your own experience where the feeling nature then comes to the masculine nature within us and says, okay, what does it look like? What does this car look like in the blue book? Okay, how much money do I have in the bank? Okay, is this possible? And almost always the thinking nature seeks to put it aside privately because it is not available for impossible experiences, at least before breakfast. But the feeling nature doesn't have those kind of boundaries. It doesn't. It's everything is possible with the feeling nature. It is able to accept it, and it is able to say, I don't know how this can be. I don't know how this can happen, but I'm open. I'm open. I'm ready to accept. And eventually, because the feeling nature holds on to, the idea is it is sustained. It is sustained. And it holds on to what it wants until the masculine nature, the thinking nature says, oh, I notice they're having a sale. I can see how we can work this out. But it has a plan. It is not just, I'll bet we can do it. It has a plan, and this is how we're going to do it. This is what we have to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Our own masculine nature is very valuable in manifesting divine ideas. Because when you have the agreement with the thinking and the feeling, then that moves into a higher state of consciousness. The consciousness where what it is you choose to manifest is in the energy world. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so you live your level of consciousness by the agreement between the thinking and the feeling in order to be at the level of consciousness of that which you desire to manifest. And when we reach that level of energy, that level of consciousness, we manifest. It can be instantly. Whenever we reach that level of consciousness, the manifestation takes place. Whether it's healing, whether it's prosperity, whether it's illumination. It requires the agreement and the reaching that level of consciousness. All right, so Joseph, when has decided to put Mary aside privately, because he doesn't, well, she's a child. She's 12 years old, and he does not, that would be the way I would look at it. I don't know how Joseph actually looked at it, but he was seeking to put her aside privately, being a just man, is the scripture. And so Gabriel comes and does not speak to the masculine nature directly, but shows up in terms of a dream. And Gabriel says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take Mary. And so Joseph recognizes this higher voice, this higher experience, and he does accept. And so now we have the agreement between the thinking and the feeling, and Joseph is willing to take part in that agreement, willing to follow through on the betrothal. So any questions about that? Because, do you see how that works in our life? Mary and Joseph are aspects of our own self, our love and our wisdom. The love and the wisdom aspects within our own being. So it requires our raising our level of consciousness in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is symbolic house of bread, house of substance. It is a higher vibration of energy that we have to bring our level of consciousness to. So, of course, they are subjugated, Judea is subjugated under Roman rule, and the decree comes out saying that you have to come to the city of your birth in order to be registered, in order for us to, the census, in order for you to be taxed. And the original prophecies about the Messiah all said that the Messiah would come from the house and lineage of David. Bethlehem is, of course, that place. And Joseph and Mary are both descendants of David. So they come to Bethlehem, and they reach that level of consciousness in Bethlehem when, but there's a slight problem at any time of the year. The inn is where the tradesmen and those who have produce to sell all come and stay. They travel in and come and stay in the hotels, and so they transact their business there. So it is a very busy place as people are working out agreements and bargains and how much they're going to pay for it. And so when Mary and Joseph arrive there, it is time for her to be delivered, but there's no room for that to happen, and so they are invited to go into the grotto, into the cave, what we love to call the stable. And it is here, in the stillness and the quietness, that the birth takes place. So when we look at our own mind, many times, and through much of our life, we are so very focused on taking care of our day-to-day business, transacting our business, making things happen, showing up for the things that are available to us, that we cannot experience the stillness and the quietness that is required in order to hear the still small voice, in order to manifest the divine idea. So we have to go beyond the hustle and bustle of our day-to-day life and experience a regular practice of meditation, a regular practice of prayer, in order to be led, guided, and directed to follow that is always for our highest good. So they reach that place of quiet, and also remember, well, I don't think I said this, but Mary is also identified as one who prays in the temple daily. So Mary has a strong prayer life, and which is why she was available in that stillness and the quietness in order to experience the hearing, in order for Gabriel to show up and talk with her directly. All right, so when this happens, let's look at the history of the wise men. You know that in Jewish culture, the secular and the religious are basically the same. That the high echelon people, the bourgeois, are the priests, are the Sadducees, are those who were in the temple and who were a part of their religious culture. And so they were also the educated ones who had been to Hebrew school. At the low end of the totem pole in terms of society are the shepherds. First of all, they didn't keep the dietary laws. Secondly, they didn't show up for high holy days. They were out in the fields keeping watch over their flocks. So don't you find it interesting that it wasn't the high priests? It wasn't the prepared. It wasn't the educated. It was out in the fields, the angels, the messengers of God, came to the shepherds. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And then the shepherds were, remember what they were? Oh, I thought that was one of my favorite things. They were sore afraid. The shepherds were sore afraid, and the angel says, fear not. Fear not, because I bring you great tidings, good tidings of great joy. And explains about what has happened in Bethlehem. And the shepherds hear about this opportunity and immediately say, hey, let's go. Let's go and check this out. Because I knew a little bit about sheep as we raised them. I was worried about that. Guys went off and left the sheep, you know. I made up a story about they drew straws and all right, you get to go and we'll come and tell you about it. So when they come, when they follow the direction of the angel and come into Bethlehem, they come to immediately where the baby and Mary and Joseph are. And they tell her what has happened. And this is the first time that there is something beyond the normal, something beyond, since Mary and Joseph have had their personal experience with the angel. And now people are coming in, the shepherds are coming in saying, this is what happened, the angels came. And Mary began to realize, I am on a different path. Mary began to realize, my life is never going to be the same. And when we are following the awareness of who we are preparing to experience in our conscious awareness what we call the birth of the Christ. So as the rest of Christianity celebrates the birth of Jesus, that every year we celebrate the birth of the Christ in our own conscious awareness. Now, we have always been the Christed one. We have always been the individualized expression of God. We are now and we will always be. But not are we always aware of it in our conscious awareness. So though the divinity is always within us, when we come to the conscious awareness of who we are, then we experience that birth or that rebirth of the sense of oneness, the sense of a deepening in the awareness of who we are. So this is metaphysics of the first aspect of the Christmas story, and next Sunday we'll go to the wise men, and Mary and Joseph again, the wise men, Herod, in the awareness that this is our story. This is our experience. It is as fresh and as relevant today as it was when the writers were writing the Christmas story 2,000 years ago. It's our story. It's our awakening to our own indwelling presence of God. Namaste.